And so, the Kevin Durant-less era for the Brooklyn Nets begins with an unfortunate loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road. And yet, Doug, I find myself feeling mostly positive. We get a look at what we think the starting rotation could be like in his absence. We see good contributions from young players, and ultimately an electric performance from one Kyrie Irving that reminds us when you're one of the best players in the league, you don't need a lot of time to ramp back up.
Yeah, look, they lost the game, but I think we can agree after watching this one that the team is still in very capable hands here for the at least the games where they're on the road. We got that from Kyrie, got a great game from him. We're going to talk about some of the rookies as well. I think we take most of the positives away from this one. We're going to get into it all, but first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am at Adam Armbrecht. He is at Doug Norrie, Blue Check Fresh. And this will be an appreciation towards you, the listeners, for making us your first listen today, free on all those great platforms. The journey begins, Doug, without Kevin Durant for the next 4-6 weeks, maybe 3 days. You never know what can happen with injuries around the Brooklyn Nets. 114-107 loss to Cleveland that prefer to win, but I also feel like there's mostly positive vibes coming out of this loss as the Nets start without Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it's like always hard to couch a loss as not like the end of the world, right? Especially when we're coming off, after we talked about yesterday, an extended absence coming from Durant and talking about how we don't want to hit the panic button too early here because they're going to need to get their feet under them a little bit. But the Kyrie Harden, tandem is good enough to be able to win games. So I think that this game was mostly positives, and they just lost a close game to a very good, mostly healthy Cleveland team, right? And so I guess we can just start there. It's a little bit of a shame to kind of waste the game that Kyrie had, which we'll talk about, but in general, like losing to Cleveland this year is not like losing to Cleveland last year,
right?
and so I guess that's a positive, but it's still one of those things. Like, yeah, all these close ones. You'd hate to look back at the end of the season and say, hey, they probably should have taken that one because they missed some very, very easy chances to win this game late.
Yeah, and I think, again, 7-point loss. It was tight all the way down the stretch. This really was a one-possession game effectively. Yeah. You mentioned about Kyrie and Harden being more than enough to win these games. I think it was a 19-game sample size for them going back to last year, 16-3 over that run. So know that, we talked about it last episode. This isn't, oh no, can you manage to stay within earshot of 500? You should be favored and capable of winning a lot of games with these two guys at the helm. I do think that this one suffered a little bit just from first game without having Kevin Durant and understanding you're going to probably get a great game from Kyrie Irving. You're going to get some positive things from a lot of these supporting cast, and yet you're still going to be playing musical chairs with who fills in X number of minutes here. When do you pull the plug on a Bruce Brown or on a Blake Griffin? You have LaMarcus Aldridge back in this one. So it just feels like, and I think we said this too, you're going to go first game. Okay, what's a little tweak? Now 2-3 games, what's a little tweak? So it may take a couple before you really feel like you've hit your stride. And I do think if this was 2 games from now, we might see a different result because I think Nash and the staff and the players will all settle in a little bit here in the absence of Durant.
Yeah, and like I said, Aldridge misses 2 bunnies near the end. Harden turns the ball over late, right? There's like a couple. Kyrie just goes, it's halfway down and it comes out. There's all these like little moments because they lost by 7. You mentioned it, but the game was this wasn't a 7-point game. This was like really and effectively like a 3-point game, let's say, right? And then it kind of just slips away at the end. But or you couch it by 1 possession, and that's just probably the correct way to say it. So but if you look back at all these little, and then Aldridge has the complete total brain fart on the Mobley, where Mobley gets behind him on the second to last like real possession for the Cavs, where he just loses Mobley and it's just like the easiest basket of all time, and that kind of starts to mostly put the game away. So it's like these little sequences near the end because I'd be hard pressed to look at the rest of the game and find any great failings that the Nets had. I thought overall this was a pretty sound game for them. They're actually able to do some things well in this one that have been struggles for them over the course of the season. And so, but if you just like look at Kyrie and you say, okay, well, Kyrie drops 27 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. He was a plus 14 in his 38 minutes. He looked great. Like he looked like fully in his bag, at like, vintage kind of Kyrie stuff, getting to the basket, which we haven't really seen a ton of in the limited time that he's playing, but he started to get it going here, like challenging bigs on the interior, like getting them to go up and, over him, where he then kind of can have his way with them. So I was really, really encouraged by the way Kyrie played. They're going to need this. Like this kind of game from him is something they just are going to need very consistently, basically for the next 6 weeks when he's available. Like they need these kind of games from him to tread water without Durant, and they definitely just can. So yes, it's a loss, but it's like I said, it's hard to fault too much of what happened here. I think because I do think it was just like. And I know someone's going to come along and be like, "Oh, you're always apologizing for these guys." It's not. I'm sure I'm going to get a comment about that, but it's not that. It's like, okay, what do you want to say? Like they played a pretty strong game. There's a couple tweaks that I probably wouldn't have done, and ultimately, I don't think it was any one thing that really caused them to lose this thing.
I'll tell you something I'll apologize for. When you wanted to hear about the Kevin Durant injury, and we had a little bit of a snafu over on YouTube, which, by the way, some of the comments from the fans over there, I mean, we're talking chef's kiss, a little ASMR testing there, working on everyone's lip reading services. So you can still check that out to see how Doug and
Is it important to post videos with sound in them? Like, I don't know. I'm not a YouTube expert.
I thought everyone was just into the visual. I thought, two good-looking guys. Who needs really to hear what they're talking
about?
Chuck
it up on mute and just watch these two guys cook, right?
but inside of that one, which we got back up there, and everyone can go check that out because it's still going to be a good reference point for where we thought the Nets were going to go and how they're going to manage the Kevin Durant injury. But to your point, seeing Kyrie get to this place now, and well, maybe this will roll over into the second segment. There's the rookies I want to talk about, some of these veteran minutes. The absence of Claxton in a game like this, I think, matters when you talk about the bigs with LaMarcus Aldridge and Dayron Sharpe. But you still continue to see the impact. When you talk about fast break opportunities, Kyrie Irving is a leader of fast breaks. He's also a one-man fast break. And I thought that the extra balance here, they went with Patty Mills in the starting lineup along with Harden, alongside Kyrie. I think that you're seeing that benefit, which you assume of, well, Kyrie can do a lot of the work on the offensive end, obviously, but it's also the ball handling that gets it out of Harden's hands so he can take off some possessions and hopefully set him up for some easier looks. Patty Mills, I think it's exponentially better when you have Kyrie Irving around because then he doesn't have to do any ball handling on a possession-to-possession basis, and he gets to just kind of set up and effectively, I mean, really, by putting him in the starting lineup, they treated Patty Mills like the Joe Harris of this group, right? That's what they're going, looks like, at least for this game. That was the intention when you put him out there in the starting rotation. So I think there's some experimentation that went on there. I'm really satisfied and excited about what Kyrie gave me. And then, like you say, there's just this little dose of disappointment around, well, sure would have been good if the reward for a performance like that was a win, but it does start to raise that bar. And also the ultimate reminder before we get into some of these guys, it's like we say this about Kevin Durant when he came back from his injury, when Harden at the beginning of the year, when people were pushing back around the idea that maybe he was cooked. We talked about this with wherever you want to put Kyrie in the hierarchy of players in the NBA. He's so effing good, and it only takes him being back on the court to remind you of that. Because here's a game, different cast of characters. He's only played with a lot of these guys for 3-4 games now. I know he's been practicing with them, and yet he looks as comfortable and effective as he ever does. And that is always the signature of an elite talent in the NBA.
Yeah, it's funny, and too, like I don't think they've even been. I heard this from somewhere else today, so I actually don't even think they've been practicing that much, which actually makes these kind of performances even that much more impressive from Kyrie. That he hasn't even gotten tons of practice time in. He had no ramp up really at all for like live game action. Like if you think about preseason, G League kind of stuff, like that, none of that happened for him at all. And to be able to just get to this level within 120 minutes or something like that, like a basketball is like, it's frankly amazing. It's a real testament to just how special he is. And again, that's why it goes back to this like sort of disappointment around losing these games where you get kind of, I would call it close to peak performances from at least one of your superstars. Yeah. That these are the games you really would like to be able to take home because I don't know, you just don't get infinity of them. And so hold your comment for 1 second. I know you got another comment. Let me hit Prize Picks real quick, and then we can get into sort of the response to that. If you are into daily fantasy and you're into the prop game market, you have to check out Prize Picks. You've probably been on some of these other bigger operators out there where maybe you're trying to put in lineups with salaries, or you're trying to go through all the DFS props, but it's kind of hard to find them sometimes. I've been through this game before where it's hard to find them, hard to sort of see exactly what you want. Just head over to Prize Picks. They've made the DFS prop game super simple. It's the best one out there. It's by far. It's really not even close. On Prize Picks, you pick 2 to 5 players. You pick the over under on their projections. If that's NBA, you're looking at points, assists, rebounds, stuff like that. Not just the starters either. You can grab bench players as well over on Prize Picks. So if you're the kind of fan like us that's just watching every single game, maybe you're going to notice some inefficiencies over there, and you're not going to be putting in these prop picks against other guys that are putting in thousands of lineups. No, it's just you versus the numbers. You pick 2 to 5 players. You go the over under. You can win up to 10x on your money. Go to prizepicks.com in the App Store. Download the app. All users that deposit using the promo code NBA are going to get free $50. It's just giving it to you just by typing those 3 letters in NBA. You get a free $50 over on Prize Picks if your entry scores a single point. So that one's easy to go. You're just going to pick one that scores at least 1 point. That's right. All users deposit and use the promo code NBA, get $50 free if your Prize Picks entry scores a single point. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
Don't select Kevin Durant over the next 4 to 6 weeks if you're looking to pick up that money on.
They're not going to do you dirty like that. They're not going to
be smart around it. And again, while you're making us your first listen of the day, go ahead and make Locked On now your second listen. It's free on all the platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can even watch them right here on YouTube as well if you're taking this in visually on the Locked On Now podcast channel, because it's local experts just like ourselves working as hard, never harder than yours truly, to give you all those local insights around all the NBA teams. Check that out when you find the time. The other piece that I want to get to then is I think there's 2 parts. There's the mostly positive takeaways, which you can see that's going to be the theme of this show. But the starting lineup, as we said, they put Patty Mills into the rotation there. Kessler Edwards, we said he's entrenched, and he was, and he continues to reward you now. This is back-to-back games, and I did mention that I thought it was a really positive thing that he already had 3-4 games starting before you get to this place now where you don't have Kevin Durant, because you could lose a few games just to the adjustment period for some of these rookies. And to that end, losing this game today, before we talk about Kessler and Dayron Sharpe, losing this game, I think it's disappointing for the simple fact that every time you lose one, it puts a little bit of pressure on the next one, right? When you talk about just treading water on a road trip, now you go, all right, you really want to get that next one then. And then where do the minutes go with a James Harden or with a Kyrie? And if you lose the next one, well, now all of a sudden you're in this difficult spot. I don't even mean the short term. It's like overall. I think the Nets would be happy to kind of trade off and on here over some of these matchups. And anytime that you feel like it's a winnable game and you're getting that performance from Kyrie, you want to grab it. But to the rookies, you mentioned the starting rotation. Would you have done it differently coming into this one? Maybe outside of Kessler Edwards being in the starting rotation, would you not have gone Patty Mills or not have gone Dayron Sharpe?
No, I liked everything about that. I think you go with as much floor space. I think at that point, if you're not going to get like the Cavs trend a little big, which is like can make or like kind of very big, sort of like they start Okoro at the 2 essentially and Markkanen at the 3, and then obviously with Mobley and Allen. So it's always weird to go a little smaller, but I think that you saw some of the advantage the Nets had with that on, was just kind of countering with, okay, if you're going to be super big, then we're just going to space the floor and we're going to get as much shooting out there as possible. We'll have Sharpe at least try to hold his own as a bigger body. And I thought he mostly did, just considering he's sort of on an island in there in terms of his size. And I know they paired him with Blake at times. I think that was specifically to counter some of the Cavs size. But that was like off the bench. No, I thought this was good. And by the way, we saw it really early. Like we saw that floor spacing from them they were able to get out and push the transition very quickly. Kyrie, you mentioned it before, and this is going to be a theme. They play so much faster when Kyrie's around. Like it instantly just is just like the Nas from Fast and Furious, just like punching it right into your system. Like it's perfect kids reference there. But like but like the piece, I'm young. Like, but the piece where the piece where like he just instantly changes the shape of what they do. Like because Harden is like not really. he's not really, he doesn't really default to that, right? Like, but he defaults to it more when Kyrie's around, right? Because they're going to get into such advantageous matchups, and Kyrie's just so good at it anyway that you would be crazy to try to slow it down once Kyrie's on the team. And once you know that, then going a little smaller and more athletic, at least around the 1 through, or the 2, like we'll put it like 2 through 4 or something like that, with Kessler, like that makes so much more sense with Kyrie around. So I'm totally fine with that. I don't think it totally killed them that they didn't try to match size. I don't think you have to do that if you have the other right pieces. And so I'm totally fine with that. And I would could just continue with this starting lineup. I kind of sort of matchup independent. I think it's just fine. I think Sharpe, probably, it wasn't always pretty, and the guy gets blocked more than anybody I've ever seen for a guy that's pretty big, like sort of like early Jared Allen vibes on that. But like,
well, by the way, but that's what I think that this piece is, because I'm fine with the rotation. We'll see when Claxton's going to get back in there, and I want to kind of get to those 3 guys at the 5 and what the Nets are looking to accomplish with each one of their individual skill sets, which showed up in this game between Dayron and LMA. But it's funny. I think in this game, again, among these rookies, Kessler Edwards keeps confirming what his value is, and that he fits the exact thing you need here. Dayron Sharpe is flashing things that you like, and then also showing some of the clunkiness, which is okay. It's growing pains. Like you mentioned about teaming up with Blake Griffin for a couple of possessions, or whether it was with James Harden, his rolls to the basket. He's very effective. I like the little glimpses we see of him passing out of the post, which really works. I don't love him getting called for 3-second violations twice on the offensive end, right? And these are learning curve things, but I think this game was that great sample of why I've tempered myself, even though I want him to be good. I temper expectations about how quickly I want him to get there. And by the way, same thing for Cam Thomas in this one too, right? Like, these 2 guys are showing you that they're not quite there yet. And it's also a matter of what's needed from their positions or from their roles versus their skill set per se. Whereas Kessler Edwards is being asked to lean into exactly what you're really good at immediately stepping into the NBA, knocking down the triple, playing effective defense, being able to switch and pick up some opportunities there. So I just think that continues to be what this sample size is around these rookies. And I wonder, as you say, keep Dayron in that starting rotation. I think most matchups it'll be fine.
Maybe it's a little different. I think when Claxton's back, like, okay, I'm using in the form of like this particular matchup. I think because Claxton was out, so maybe things change a little bit matchup dependent when Claxton's back. So I'm going to reserve the chance to, but that would probably be the only move I would make. I don't think I would do anything else different. Like, you cannot put Aldridge back in the starting lineup. Like, with this group, it just doesn't help you at all. And so I wouldn't do any of those moves. But the Claxton thing, I would do. One thing about Kessler too is that and we saw this again tonight or today because of the day game, is that one thing I really like about him is that he hasn't had a ton of time on the court, but I think it really helped him that his first sort of coming out party as a Nets were playing with total house money around, when they were just kind of racked by COVID protocol stuff, and they just needed him to play minutes. It was like, dude, just do whatever. We just need you to play a lot of minutes because we just don't have anybody. Right. I think that helped him from a confidence piece, because you see where he is now, that he has a very quick trigger around the 3, and that that's really important for him, I think, in this team, because he cannot, the decision making, at least around his decision making is not always perfect, but his decision making about when to take the shot is very good. And we saw that in today's game, that even on the misses, it was like, okay, good, that's the shot, you should take that. Like, you need to have teams respect that you're going to get these 3s up very quickly. And he had 2 things where I think it's going to look even better, where he actually got into the mid-range a little bit and actually made one of them. And that's not exactly his game, but if he can have even a little bit of that, then you really start having to keep defenses honest. And so I think for him, it's a no-brainer. He has to stay in the starting lineup, at least for now. Just because that's the one thing they really, really need. And they do not have another guy on the roster right now that can do it. You want to, Kevin Durant comes back and you want to put him at the 4 or something like that, or, okay, then that's,
you want to give him a shot. Okay,
sure. That's different. But honestly, outside of that, I guess Joe Harris, I don't know, but for the most part,
what's funny, man?
You have to keep him in here.
Yeah, you know what? So there's actually, I have a couple of thoughts around that and going forward, and then the LaMarcus Aldridge piece. So I want to get into that. I think you're right on Kessler Edwards and the skill set and some of these other guys, but hit us up with a bet online. And then, because this other part that I want to get to is kind of about this next step here when Joe Harris comes back and some of the moving pieces you may do, especially in the absence of Kevin Durant.
All right, yeah. So BetOnline wants to wish you a happy new betting year, 2022, baby. It's not even rolling off the tongue the way it should be, but it is over. Is that what it is? I don't know if BetOnline's gonna want you to hear that, say it that way. But anyway, BetOnline remains the number one spot for all your best sports wagering action for 2022. New year, new updated desktop and mobile website, super sleek, very easy to use over at BetOnline. Like I said before yesterday, Nets are still the odds-on favorite, plus 275 to win the NBA championship on BetOnline. If you sign up for BetOnline today, you're going to get a 50% welcome bonus on the first deposit. You have to use the promo code LOCKEDON, just like our podcast network. That's going to get you started. They got football playoffs. We're rolling through those games, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, throw in some Vegas casino games as well. Go take advantage of all the great offers for this year. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
You're enjoying our podcast, why not go ahead and make one of your second listens Locked On Bets? It's your boy Q with expert analysis from Lee Sterling, available on all those platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, giving you all those betting insights that you need. And of course, because it's the Locked On Podcast Network, you know that they're tapped into all of our local experts as well. Be sure to check that out. All right, so mostly positive takeaways from this game, as we say. I think you just tapped into it there around keeping Kessler Edwards in the starting rotation. That makes all the sense. Then when Joe Harris comes back, the adjustment would be Patty Mills getting him into the second rotation. Obviously, this home and away game balance, sure. But then Joe Harris, I think, does slide into kind of this flexible role of depending on the matchup. You want to, today, I said tonight again, you spread out the floor, have more shooters. In a world where you have Joe Harris and Kessler Edwards on the floor together now, and then it's Kyrie Irving, right? All of a sudden the combinations you get three deep on guys that can knock down perimeter shots. And up until this point, in Kyrie's return on these road games, the Nets haven't really had that around Durant and around Harden. We said this before. It's not that they can't knock them down, but three-point shooting is not the number one facet of Harden or of Kevin Durant's game. So that would dramatically change if Edwards can continue this level of play. That dramatically shifts how you look at this team and the potency that their offense can continue to have.
Yeah, the last time they had it was when they had Jeff Green last year, right? Like that was the closest proxy for what, and Jeff Green's better than Kessler Edwards, so like I'm not really not prepared to go down this road yet, but just in terms of sort of archetype, like Jeff Green was close. Like they don't have this is where they were struggling to fill that spot for this season so far, right? Was like that single guy replacement. It really became apparent of just how important Jeff Green was for the overall mechanism of what they were trying to run last season. And why it was so devastating. He wasn't the most important reason, but it turns out he was very, very important to what they were trying to do. They did not effectively replace that player. They kind of tried to cobble together lots of little pieces that sort of made it, but like we saw what happened when you try to kind of run out some of these combinations, that it just started to get weird. And so, yeah, no, I think this would be totally fine. I'm still very concerned that like this Harris thing just continues to drag on. Like he does not look any closer. Like maybe he's ramping up basketball activity, but I don't know what the last word we got. Yeah.
I think the timeline, now they said it's been tricky or whatever, but I think the official timeline like would have been wrapping up about now. I want to go back and check that. I forgot to do it before. I'll do it after this one just to make sure. The full timeline, it would have been him coming back this week-ish. So if you hear these back on the court over the next week or two, then it's okay. But to your point, it's never great with the Nets, but they did say when you're removing a little bit of there's an official quote from high-profile people covering the NBA and the Nets that says removing a bit of bone from his ankle. Like the complications,
I was like,
I guess
no
around.
No biggie.
Just
take a look at a little piece of bone that's just kind of floating around there. No big deal. Like, don't freak out about it. It's not a big deal.
And you'll be fine after that. But that is you're right though. It is a concern, and maybe this is also the positive of stemming that tide. Should it take a little bit longer? If we assume at some point Harris will be back, then these guys like Kessler Edwards stepping up makes it more manageable to surround Harden and now Kyrie over this short term with some perimeter guys.
Yeah, for sure. Let me make one more point about these rookies, because I want to say one thing about Dayron Sharpe too, about like just what he has brought to the team. So this was something that we threw out there during the game today. But I was like, oh man, like he grabbed 2 early offensive rebounds. Sharpe did, and we all know that this has been just something the Nets completely stink at this season. Was what kind of just rebounding in general, but specifically like offensive rebounding has been totally non-existent. And obviously second chance points have been a huge problem for the Nets again. Like this is kind of a season over season problem for them, whatever. But Dayron Sharpe has only played, I mean, now because it was 180, so now he's played like 210 minutes. He's already has the third most offensive rebounds on the team, and he's like hundreds and hundreds of minutes behind the other guys that are ahead of him. And he's already just so it has been this nice little thing that I think that the Nets can kind of lean on a little bit with him, is that he does this one thing. It's like sort of like Edwards too in this way. It's like he does a couple of these things that just kind of no one else seems to be able to do on the team, specifically offensive rebound, without giving too much away. So I thought that was interesting, but then I actually kept looking at it a little deeper. He has the best, and I tweeted this out, so if you saw this twice, whatever, but he has the best per minute offensive rebounding rate in the league for guys that have played 200 or more minutes. Like, now maybe the sample size is small, but your eyes do kind of show that the eye test backs this up, because like these have not been easy offensive rebounds that he's been getting. He gets like sort of like high acumen, sort of intelligence, ball hawking offensive rebounds. And it's, I don't know, have the Nets had like a really good guy at this? Like since, I mean, Jared Allen was okay at it, right? Like, so it's just nice to have this thing that it always feels like the Nets completely stink at least over the last year or so, and he just does this kind of at an almost elite level.
Well, and this does tap into my other final point around the five, so to speak, as we say, with Marcus Aldridge and Nicholas Claxton and Dayron Sharpe. We always say, right, this game was actually a little bit of a relief around what Kyrie and Harden can command from a defensive perspective from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and LaMarcus Aldridge still being able to get into his mid-range game. My concern is, and we'll keep an eye on it, is starting to bog down and hang out around those elbows and make it difficult for Aldridge to get those shots, because if he's not, the thing that he isn't doing is getting a lot of offensive rebounds or putbacks. Had a couple, missed them. But bottom line being that, Dayron Sharpe is a unique skill set to what the Brooklyn Nets lack. Now, in the same vein, it's Nicholas Claxton has a unique skill set, what he can do defensively and his switchability and the matchups that he can pick up for you, right? So all three of these guys do different things that are valuable. For Dayron Sharpe, I mentioned about the passing at the top here. I like that. We talked about this at the time of the draft and where can his game grow to? If he can, between now and the end of this season, show any ability to hit an elbow jumper, right? Something along those lines. This is the thing that we know Nicholas Claxton isn't going to do, and the other side of what LaMarcus Aldridge isn't going to do, give you high-end rebounds or be defensively versatile and switching. If Dayron can do that, then he starts to compile the skill sets that you need to complement a healthy Brooklyn Nets roster. So that's the interesting thing to watch for. But as it stands right now, it's why, by the way, him and LaMarcus Aldridge, without having Nicholas Claxton, Sharpe plays 24 minutes, Aldridge comes in for 23, and you end up getting 17 minutes from Blake Griffin, right? Like you have to lean into it. And then you go with Thomas for 19. You're already playing three other guards in this game, and you throw a fourth one into it. So, a fifth one, with Bruce Brown giving you 12. Like, it's because they lack the ability to be effective every single possession on both ends of the floor that you have to start balancing them out. And even when Claxton comes back, I think all the minutes are going to look kind of the same for these guys. And that's not a negative, but one of them out of Claxton or Dayron Sharpe would be the one to step up and show the next phase of their game. And Dayron is clearly the most capable of adding that to what he's currently doing.
I'll just take him not getting blocked pretty consistently at the rim.
That's neither here nor there.
Like
disregard that completely.
I'm not even. I hear what you're saying. For me, at this point, in terms of his trajectory, this is a Sharpe. I think I would be happy just leaning into the things, like not asking too much from him right now, and just saying, hey, these are the things you do pretty well. You get to the rim, and you pair pretty decently with James Harden. I think that will continue to improve with just like reps and timing. And Harden, we already know, is great at this piece. So he can make most guys look pretty good at this if they have even a sliver of skill around it. And I think Sharpe does have that. And so I think just having him do that, having him continue staying on the offensive boards like he's been doing, offering a big body. He's already a pretty decent screener, mostly because he's just so freaking wide that like he's just so thick that and he did even a couple of screens and rescreens in this game, which I thought were pretty good. So I think in general, I'm only going to pump the brakes on that piece because I just don't need to see that yet. I'm like, let's just do the things you do well and continue to get better about that. And if like one day it comes around that you're ready to take like a non-restricted area shot, like I'd be here for it, but I'm just like not going to be on the lookout for it. Like I think that we've been wanting this, like maybe like from Claxton in the past. So I don't know. Like that.
No,
that's why.
I mostly would love to just see three guys, those three guys, all giving me an effective 20 to 23 minutes apiece, and that's fine. Yep. Exactly what they're doing right now. So, but I can dream, Doug. One can dream.
Oh, buddy, you're a dreamer. That's why you love these guys.
It's the deuce.
It's the deuce. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Like I said, go check out the YouTube channel. The video will have sound on it this time, so don't. I don't think anyone needs to worry about it. No one needs to freak out. There's gonna be sound on the video.
Oh my god!
I blame YouTube. Thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing, big tech. Go check out the Locked On Nets YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the show notes. Go jump into the comments. Really appreciate everyone that continues to comment over there. Even when you disagree, we appreciate those as well. Gets a nice little conversation going. So like and subscribe over on the Locked On Nets YouTube channel.
It's all happening for the Brooklyn Nets, friends. See, you get 3 or 4 good pals together. Well, you got yourself a tribe, and there ain't nothing stronger than that. William H. Billy the Kid Bonney.
Oh, Young Guns, baby. Yes. I think that was Young Guns 1 or 2. Who cares? One of the great American poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.